everybody, I'm Latrina Patrick. Welcome to day 6 of our 90-day grant writing tutorial. I hope that you've enjoyed everything we've shared so far and that it's been helpful to you. Today we are plunging into writing the actual grant. So before you can start writing a grant, there are some things you need to do to prep, to get prepared. And I'm going to cover those things today, as well as the components that you need to be aware of that go into every proposal. So before you sit down to write any grant, there are some things you need to do to get prepared. Number 1, do your research. Before I can sit down and write anything, I have to make sure that my research and all that stuff is in order before I can start to getting into a real writing flow. The reason why research is important is because you want to make sure that you justify the need for your program to your funding agencies. They need to see that there is rationalization for what you're doing. There's a rationale for your program, that you're not just out there doing something because it feels good, but there is indeed a need for the program and that there is data to back up the fact that it's necessary. And also, if you're doing something that has is an evidence-based program, this is the time that you really want to highlight that, because funders love to see that what you're doing has a proven track record. So get your research in order. The second thing you want to do is, as I mentioned the other day when we talked about funding announcements, that you have to go back several times to look at that funding announcement. And so one of the things that you need to go back and look at as you're preparing to start your writing process is to look at the point scale. And this is always included in a federal grant and a state grant, maybe not so much in a corporate or a foundation grant, but there is a point scale that they attach to every component of the proposal. You want to look at the point scale because this is an indication of what's the most important part of the proposal. Now, I say that you want to see what's the most important part, but honestly, when it comes to applying for a grant, you want to maximize on all of your points. So whether or not you're getting 25 or 30 points for the program description or 5 points for the budget, the grant process is so competitive, you really can't afford to waste any points. You don't want to leave any points on the table. So make sure you maximize all of your points, but you still want to take a look at what are the most important aspects of that proposal to that funder. That will give you a big indication of where you need to put the bulk of your work. The third thing you need to do is to make sure that you get your letters of support and your letters of commitment in order. There's a slight difference between a letter of support and a letter of commitment. You will typically use one or the other. Let me explain for a second. A letter of support is basically a letter that you solicit from your community partners or people of influence in your particular community that can write a good letter to support you with that funding agency. So for example, if you have say the mayor or someone or a county or city commissioner on your board of directors, you have a good relationship with the school system, and so the superintendent might be someone, or a principal of a school. Say you have an after-school program and you use a particular school, then that principal will be someone really great to get a letter of support from. So they are just stating their support for you and just saying why that funding agency would not be going in the wrong direction if they funded your program. A letter of commitment is a little different. A letter of commitment is something that you get from your active community partners. So as I made the example with the principal at a school, where if you have a program where the school is allowing you to use their facility to run your after-school program, that's a letter of commitment that you would need from them, where they would state out that they are committing to continue to allow you to use that facility at no cost. Maybe they're giving you an in-kind donation, meaning that they don't charge you anything for the space. You want to get a letter of commitment from them. Or maybe you have another grantor who is giving you money in some other capacity. You want to have them write a letter of commitment stating that they will give those funds to you. Those are the types of things where people are committing to do something in support of that program. They have an active role in the success of your program and in that program going on. So that's the difference between a letter of support and a letter of commitment. You want to get these as early as possible. You don't want anything to distract you when you start your writing process, and those type of things hanging over your head, and if you forget about them, they could be very crucial to you. If you hold that process up too long and you don't get them and the grant is due, you can be in big trouble. So I always get these first. If I have a grant deadline, say of March 15th, well, I'm not going to give them until March 14th to give me my letters of support. What I'm going to typically do is give them way in advance a deadline. I make a fake deadline. So I will probably say, March the 5th, I need your letters of support. Here's a strategy to get those letters of support early. On my website, I have an email update subscription. So if you go to my website at www.greatervisionconsulting.com, if you subscribe to my email updates and my newsletter, I send you a free grant writer's toolkit. The reason why that's important to you is because in that toolkit, I have a sample letter of support, a template to help you get that letter. So to facilitate the process of you getting your letters from your community partners, you want to send them a sample. You don't want them to duplicate it word for word, but you want them to use it as a guide. I'm sure your community partners are very busy and people have the best of intentions. And so to make it as easy as possible for them to get you what you need, I always give them a template. And you'd be surprised at how quickly they can turn it around because they haven't really had to think about anything. They just use your letter as a guide and it makes it so much easier for them. So if you go to my website, subscribe for the email updates, you'll get that template and it'll help you to get what you need from your partners. So those are the 3 things that you want to make sure that you do before you even sit down to write. Get your research, get your point scale, be clear on what the points are for each section, and get your letters of support early. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about is the components that go into a grant proposal. The funding announcement is going to tell you all these components that you need to know, but in the case where you're submitting to, say, a foundation or a corporation that has a little more informal process and they may not spell all of that stuff out, then you need to know what goes on in a typical proposal. So in a typical proposal, it's going to include a program, it's going to start out with a problem statement. It's going to include a program description, which includes your goals and objectives for your program, the actual description of what your program is, your organizational background, and it'll also include like your management plan and your timelines. So those are the things that go into that second part. The third part is an evaluation. This will be mandatory in any state or federal grant that you apply for. Not so much for a corporate or a foundation, but it's definitely one of those things that's good to include in there, even if it's not mandatory, because this shows them that, you have thought about how you're going to evaluate what you're doing. They want to know that what you're doing is having an effect in that community. And that's the one thing they look at before people want to consider giving you more funds or continuation funds. So an evaluation component is crucial. And the fourth thing is going to be a budget. Every grant, regardless of whether it's corporation, foundation grant, state or federal, is going to require a budget to show why you need the funds and how you plan to spend those funds. And then the last thing is going to be appendices. You're going to this is where you'll include your letters of support or commitment. You'll typically have to include your proof of your nonprofit status here and some other things. Each type of proposal will let you know, each funding announcement will let you know what to include in those sections. But those are just some examples. Now that's just the highlights of what goes into a proposal. What we're going to start doing beginning in tomorrow's tutorial is going through each of those sections. I'm going to start now to break down for you what goes into a problem statement, what goes into a program description, what needs to be included in your evaluation, what areas can you include in your budget, and what you need to include in your appendices. This is where we really get into the meat of what it takes to write a successful grant, and I'm really excited to get into that part for you. I just wanted to set the baseline for you this week, and now we're about to get into the meat of this. So I look forward to that tomorrow. Now I hope you've enjoyed today, and if you have any questions or comments, I ask that you please leave them here on our YouTube channel so that other people can benefit from those responses. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel, because that way you will get immediate notification whenever I upload a new video. And also, speaking of that notification, as I indicated earlier, if you go to my website, www.greatervisionconsulting.com. Subscribe to my email and newsletter updates, and you will get my weekly email that goes out every Monday about what the schedule is for that week. I will send out every Monday the agenda for that week of tutorials, so you'll know in advance what's coming up, and that way you can make sure you plug into those days that are most important to you. All right, so I hope that you've enjoyed today. I look forward to getting into the meat of the grant tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye.